Perfect.
Fabulous, fabulous. So I'm going to start off, yes, the CPR to reset your mindset. So really just to get you in the right mindset for the next hour. I'm going to take you back to 1954 because I love stories, and you'll see that. I love, love, love stories. And particularly this story, you may have heard of this story, that up until 1954, no one had ever run a mile in under 4 minutes. They had tried time and time again. In fact, for 68 years, this was a record that runners were trying to break. You had these incredible athletes, you had these coaches, you had people who were putting all sorts of training programs together, but no one could break the record. And so you had other experts who said, okay, so we've got to have perfect ideal circumstances. It's the temperature's got to be around about 20 degrees. The track's got to be like dry clay. There's got to be a huge boisterous crowd, and maybe that'll help. They tried everything. And then on the 6th of May, 1954, a young medical student by the name of Roger Bannister, who was a runner, took to the field in Oxford. And it wasn't a perfect day. It wasn't 20 degrees. The track was not dry clay. In fact, it was pretty overcast. There was a blistering wind. It was only a crowd of just under 3,000 people. The track was a little bit damp. But you know, months and months of physical training and mental training peaked at just the right time. And Roger Bannister crossed the finish line at 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. I mean, this was huge, absolutely huge. The record had been broken. Now, besides the fact that we celebrate that he broke the record, there was something far more significant that actually took place. Because just 46 days later, John Landy broke the record as well. 3 minutes, 58 seconds. 3 months after that, 3 runners in the same race ran the mile in under 4 minutes. And since then, over 1,500 runners have completed that, a mile in under 4 minutes. So we can sit and we can debate what happened, and, you know, did they change their training, and was it training shoes, and what could have impacted this incredible surge in achievement? And I think you've got the answer, right? It's pretty simple when you really think about it. What Roger Bannister did when he crossed that finish line in under 4 minutes was he shattered a limiting belief, the limiting belief that it wasn't possible. And as soon as he did it, and people realized, the runners realized that it was possible, the mindset changed. Because that really is what the mindset is all about. It's about a set of beliefs that create this mindset. So once that had changed, the mindset shifted. And mindset is everything. You know, it's not tangible, yet it permeates every area of our lives. It permeates how we communicate, how we interact, how we create, collaborate, sell, love, listen, solve problems. It all boils down to our mindset. It is our approach. Our mindset determines who we are in the world, how we are in the world, what we do with what we have, and why we do it. And it's all underpinned by our beliefs, our values. So once that belief shifted, the mindset shifted, and this became a goal that was absolutely achievable. Small shift in mindset, huge shift in possibility. So I'm really excited about having to share some ideas about how mind shift works and how you can reset your mindset in the moment. You know, when people look at success and they say, well, what do we attribute the success to? A lot of people will say, well, the skill set, but only 20% is attributed to the skill set, and really 80% to the mindset. Mindset is everything. And it's very, very personal. So I'm going to be spending this next hour, as I've said, trying to teach you how to do it in the moment. Let's first break down this idea of the mindset and have an opportunity for you to look at yourself. Are you the kind of person who says, this is who I am, this is how I like it, and I'm not prepared to do it in any other way? This is me. Or, this is what I like, and this is what I don't like, and I don't like to do any other things. Or are you the kind of person who says, this is me, but I'm open to change, I'm open to learning, I'm open to expanding? How do you see yourself? And it's a really important question to ask yourself, to consider, do I see myself as a person who can change? Or am I stuck and rigid within my beliefs, how I see myself, how I see the world, how I see everything unfolding around me? Because I'm sure you've all heard of Carol Dweck. She's a professor, she's a psychologist in the US, and she did a lot of research into mindset. And she came up with these two different mindsets. And she says there are two types of mindsets. You have the fixed mindset and you have the growth mindset. And so the growth mindset is all about, this is who I am, but I have the ability to change, to grow, to learn, to expand. And then you have this fixed mindset when you have this idea, this is who I am. This is how I was born. I can't be any other way. And as I've said, really consider that. And so the wonderful thing is that modern neuroscience actually supports the idea of a growth mindset, because there's something called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is just the rewiring of the brain, the idea that the brain is set, that we have these formative years. This is what we learn. This is what we're capable of. And it's almost as if the brain freezes. It's just outdated. And science has shown with fMRI scans that the brain is changing all the time. It is reorganizing, rewiring itself. And how? Through repeated action. So if you start to introduce repeated new habitual ways of doing things, you can rewire your brain and you literally move from the fixed mindset to the growth mindset. You are 100% capable of shifting, changing, growing, expanding. And so the next hour, I'm just going to be showing you some little tools, some really easy, very simple tools that if you start to introduce daily, eventually will rewire your brain. And eventually it'll become something that happens more naturally for you. So I've broken down changing a mindset into 3 components. And the first component falls under your daily habits. And these are the kind of exercises that you introduce, like mindfulness practice, breathing practice, the deep breathing practices, a practice of gratitude. These are the kind of daily habits that you introduce that start to shift how you see the world, who you are in the world. Then the second component is the CPR, to reset your mindset. And that is in the moment. So in that moment, how do you press that reset button? And then the third component, it's the inner workings, your inner workings. Because as I said right at the beginning, your belief is the foundation for your mindset. And we have beliefs that go way, 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 way back. Those foundational beliefs drive us. And that's self-inquiry. That's work that you do. It's deep work where you start to identify what the beliefs are that are getting in the way. You put them up to self-inquiry, and all of a sudden things start to open up. So I really, shifting a mindset is as deep as you want to go. Today, I'm focusing on the second component, which is the CPR, to reset your mindset. So just let's have a look at what the CPR, to reset your mindset, stands for. So the C stands for call it, the P stands for perspective shift, and the R stands for the reframe. So the very first step when we're looking at the CPR to reset your mindset is to identify what your triggers are. And what I mean by your triggers, like what pushes you, what pushes your buttons. When someone says something to you, when someone challenges you, how do you react? What is your habitual response? Your challenge? Do you become defensive? Do you attack back? Do you shrink? Do you cower? Are you thoughtful? Like, what is your habitual response? If someone criticizes you, do you see that again as something that you need to fight back, attack, become defensive, find a bad point within them? What happens to you? Or do you take it as something that breaks you down? How do you respond to criticism? When you're driving in the car and someone pulls in front of you, what is your natural response? Do you start swearing and screaming and become abusive? Or someone in a queue in front of you? What are your natural habitual responses? You're not aware of it, but you have these responses. And how many times have you said things? Have you done things? Have you made decisions? And when you look back, you regret your behavior. You're almost ashamed by how you behaved, because over time you are able to see it in a completely different perspective. And if you're nodding your head and you're saying, you know, I can relate to this. There are many times I react and I'm not happy by my reaction. I was not happy with my response, the answer, etc., etc. I just want to tell you that you're not alone. You're human. We're human. There's nothing wrong with you. This is what we do. You know, all of these situations, you have this underpinning idea, this feeling of being threatened. And we as human beings, when we're threatened, we start operating in the sympathetic nervous system. We're in fight or flight mode. It's our habitual response. It's an instinct to feel like we have to defend ourselves. But we're not in a life-threatening situation. And if we really identify stressful situations as not life-threatening, if we can have a moment to pause before we just react, then things start to change. So our triggers are very important. You know, I want to read a definition, because you've heard about in the heat of the moment. And the Collins Dictionary defines in the heat of the moment as without stopping to think about what you're doing or saying because you're angry or excited. And I really want to emphasize without stopping. You see, we think that in order to be effective, we need to respond immediately. But what I'd like to invite you to do from this moment forward is to pause before you respond. You know, there is a tiny little gap between stimulus and response. It exists. That little gap absolutely exists. But when we're in that fight or flight, we ignore it completely. We go straight into response. As soon as we feel threatened in any way, and threatened comes in many layers, but we go straight into that response mode. And we're not operating from the proper part of our brain. We're operating from the very emotional, the limbic system. So what we want to do is we want to make use of that gap. You know, you've all heard of, there we go. You've all heard of Viktor Frankl, who said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. I'm going to read that again because this is key. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. So there is a golden rule when it comes to resetting our mindset, and it is check in before you check out. That's all. Check in, pause before you check out. You're probably saying, yeah, it's easier said than done, because when you're on the spot or when you're under pressure, you can't pause. You can't take that breath. You can't think. I spoke about the components of changing a mindset. The first component being introducing new habitual ways of being. And part of the mindset and the mindfulness and the connection there is the mindfulness allows you to slow down. The mindfulness brings you into the present moment, because very often you'll notice that when you are reacting in an inappropriate way, or when you're reacting in a non-productive way, or when you're reacting in an antagonistic way, it's usually because you're lost in thought without even realizing it. You're so busy concentrating on how you're going to respond. And remember that when you're in that present moment, how the brain works, because this brain is absolutely incredible. The primary function of this brain is to keep us safe, to get our genes into the next generation. So what the brain does is it stores certain memories, so that memories where we felt we were in trouble, or there was danger, or something bad happened, or whatever it is, and the brain stores all of those memories, and then the brain is continually projecting it into the future, and the brain is doing it now. So when you feel like you're being criticized, or you feel like someone's confronting you, you are basing this response on past previous experiences. The history is imprinted on this moment, and you're already projecting into what you're going to say, how you're going to respond, and you're not in that moment. And this happens very, very, very quickly. So I can't stress enough the importance of pausing and checking in before you check out. So how do we do it? We simply pause. We simply take a very conscious breath, and we bring ourselves into this moment. And in the beginning, it may seem quite contrived. It may seem quite unnatural because we're used to just responding so quickly. But start to do that. Start to really get into the habit of, as someone is saying something or as something is playing out, just pausing and bringing yourself into the moment. So pause, take a conscious breath, and then respond appropriately. So the check-in before you check out is going to save you in many ways, and it definitely leads into the P and the R of the CPR. And it just gives you the opportunity to identify that you, in this situation, the immediate response, once you pause and you really look at what's happening and what's really unfolding, can change dramatically. The way you see this instant unfolding can change dramatically. So with the CPR, we're going to first go to the call it. And the calling it is just that. It's calling yourself out of being lost in thought and bringing yourself into the moment. So let me give you just a quick little breakdown of how thought and feeling works. And you may think, well, why is this even relevant? And it's so relevant because this is what impacts your state of mind in the moment. So you have your mindset, right? And you have this mindset that's developed from all of these beliefs, all of these stories of who you are in the world, how you see yourself, what you do with what you have, all of these things with the mindset. And this drives thoughts that are happening in the moment. All of these subconscious beliefs bring about these subconscious thoughts that we're not thinking. They just enter our minds and they create our state of mind in the moment, and we are reacting out of that state of mind, which is why the check-in before you check out is so important, because it brings us into the moment. So the one process of doing that is the call it. And all the call it is doing is making us aware of the thought that we're lost in, because the state of mind in the moment determines who we are. And let me expand on that very quickly. You go to gym, and sometimes you walk in and it's absolutely amazing. You are in the zone. You're working out. You're sweating. Your heart is pumping. Everything's happening the way you want it to. It's fantastic. The next day you go to gym and everything's just annoying you. It's frustrating. It's irritating. The music is too loud. There are too many people. Your knee is sore, whatever it is. And then another time you go to gym and you're not even aware. You're so lost in thought. You leave gym and it was just an hour spent exercising. So the question is, what was changing each time you went to gym? Was gym changing? Like, did they change the music radically? Did the people radically change? Did the equipment radically change? What changed? Nothing changed externally. The only thing that changed was this internal thought, feeling, process that takes place in your own mind. Because as you think something, you feel that thought. So you think it, you feel it, you have an emotional response, and then you act on it, and it becomes who you are. So every time you go to gym, you're having a different mental experience. Try it. See the next time you go shopping. Sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes it's awful. You come home, you see your partner. Have you noticed how sometimes they are just the best? They're perfect, they're wonderful. And other times they're just so irritating. Have you ever found that? And again, ask yourself, what's happening? Are they changing? Or is there something happening in my own mind? In other words, I'm not experiencing the external world. I'm only experiencing my mind. And this is something you can really think on for a while, because it's very, very empowering when you get it. I'm not experiencing the external world. Yes, I'm seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, but the experience is happening in my mind based on what I believe, who I am. That impacts how I experience it. So the state of mind is what is coming up in the moment, and either we are collaborative and we are open to discussion and we can communicate, or for some reason we aren't. And if we're not awake to it, then we're just responding blindly. We're just in the default mode, the habitual way of responding. And this, what I'm teaching you, is how to stop that. To wake up, to be aware. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I saying? How am I responding? So the call it is just that. You're calling it, I'm lost in thought. And the calling it is identifying what kind of thought you're lost in. Oh, this is a frustrating thought. This is a planning thought. This is an angry thought. This is a scared thought. I'm not even going to be specific about how you name your thoughts. What you're doing by naming the thought is you are separating from the thought. Because up until that moment, you think you are the thought, because the thought creates the feeling. Your feeling is in your body and you think it's real. So you're having an anxious thought about something, and all of a sudden you're feeling anxious and you have this anxious scenario. And I'm saying to you, you can separate from that in that moment by noticing. You are noticing that there are these thoughts. You are not your thought. You are noticing there are these thoughts. It's how it works. We are Homo sapiens sapiens. We are this species that thinks, and we know we think. We are not our thoughts. Our mind secretes thoughts. So in that moment, when you realize, you check in before you check out, so you've paused, you're aware you're lost in thought, and you just name the thought, whatever the thought is. As soon as you've named that thought, it's going to be a feeling in your body. So just notice, it's in my shoulders, it's in my stomach. I feel the anxiety, or I feel the anger in my throat, or I feel it in my jaw, or whatever it is. And then instantly you breathe, you calm yourself down. And when you calm yourself down, you're no longer operating in the sympathetic nervous system, but now in the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. And what happens is the prefrontal cortex wakes up. And this is the part of the brain that's going to help you regulate your emotions, your responses, have the ability to empathize, to think, to plan. That part of the brain comes back on board. When you're just in this fight or flight, remember, you're in the emotional part of the brain. And that's why you very often regret what you say, or think, maybe it wasn't appropriate what I said, or the decision I made, I wish I had just paused. I wish I didn't feel like I was under pressure to make that decision there and then. So I hope I've really explained the importance of the call it. The call it being, you check in before you check out. So the call it is, I'm lost in thought. What kind of thought am I lost in? How am I feeling it? Because remember, what you're doing is you're bringing yourself into this moment. You're separating from that. So you're trying to neutralize your state of mind, and then you're breathing. And so you realize, when you're in an angry state, when you're in a fearful state, when you're in a stressed state, you're not going to be making the right decisions. But by calling it, feeling it, breathing it, you are coming back into the moment. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, but who has time to do that? Who has time to go through these stages when in the moment you have to make a decision? It's the same with the golden rule of check in before you check out. You do it over and over again. And I want to just emphasize that the call it and the feel it and the breathe it can happen in an instant. It's not call it, pause. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? That you can do afterwards, absolutely. But you start to train yourself in the moment to be awake. You know that when you're awake, you can achieve a great amount. Your brain is incredibly powerful. When you are in danger or someone that you love is in danger, you are operating before your brain has even told you to do it. You're operating automatically. So when you train yourself to call it, to feel it, to breathe it, again, that gap, you're expanding that gap, but not time-wise. You're expanding that gap. You're creating the space for yourself, for your mind to clear, for your state of mind to calm down, to make the decision, to say the right thing, to respond appropriately. And it can happen in an instant. The more you do it, the easier it gets. If there are any questions, by the way, please just jot them down, and I will have time afterwards to answer those questions. So we're going to, that's it. So call it, breathe it, and then feel it. And there it is. And really the importance of that, I cannot stress enough. So we're going to go to the P of the CPR. And the P stands for perspective. And I have to share a story to give you an idea of perspective. Again, I'm not sure if you've heard the story, but I love stories. And it's a story about a lady who's at the airport and she's waiting to catch her flight. And she's got a while. So she goes and buys herself her favorite packet of chocolate chip cookies. And she's got a wonderful book. And she sits down next to a man and she's ready to wait for her flight. And so she takes her packet of chocolate chip cookies and she opens them. She puts her hand in and she takes one of the cookies and she puts the packet next to her. And all of a sudden she notices that the man next to her puts his hand in her packet of chocolate chip cookies and he takes one and he bites it. And she looks at him. I mean, she's absolutely horrified. I mean, did this actually happen? And he looks back at her with the cookie in his hand and he smiles at her and he takes a bite. She's a little bit confused. Did it happen? Didn't it? But he's eating it. Anyway, she carries on reading. She puts her hand in the packet again and she nibbles again. And she notices that this man next to her does the same thing. She takes a cookie, he takes a cookie, she takes a cookie, he takes a cookie. And as she's sitting there, she feels this rage rise within her. She's absolutely horrified that this man is so rude and that he's so selfish and that he could do it. I mean, if he just asked, she would say, sure, take one, but he didn't even ask. And then there is one biscuit left and she's wondering what's going to happen. And he puts his hand into the packet and he breaks the cookie in half and he gives half to her and he has the other half. And that almost takes her over the edge. But then there's an announcement that her plane is ready to be boarded. And so she takes her book and she opens her bag. And as she's putting her book into her bag, she notices in her bag her packet of chocolate chip cookies. And she realizes then and there that she had been eating his chocolate chip cookies. And it is such a wonderful, wonderful story. It's such an incredible illustration of how the perspective shift works, because when she first thought that they were her cookies, she saw him as rude and selfish and really a chancer and a despicable human being. And once she realized that they were his cookies and he had been sharing them with her, all of a sudden she saw him as such a warm, generous, kind human being. And of course, the contrast between her response and his response. And so I bring in the perspective shift when it comes to the CPR, because the perspective shift, I like to say, deals directly with how you deal with people in the moment. In the moment. Once again, this brain wants to keep us safe. This brain is planning and predicting. So we are judgmental. It's what we do. I'm going to say it again. Stop bashing yourself up because you do this wrong or this wrong. We've got a brain that's making us do a lot of the things. And I'm not trying to excuse it, because if you don't know it, but once you're aware of what's happening, then you get to shift it. We all judge. We're assessing all the time. Do I like this person? Don't I? Are they a threat? Aren't they? Is this good? Is that bad? We're doing it without even being aware of it. We are filled with judgmental thoughts. And so with people, bearing in mind, we are only ever experiencing a situation from our perspective. So a perspective shift is just the ability to take a situation and see it from another person's perspective. And why? Why would I want to see it from another person's perspective? Because my perspective is limited. It's limited to my knowledge, my thoughts, my beliefs, my history and experience that's imprinted in this moment. And that if I want open communication, if I want to learn, if I want collaboration, if I want to win one, if I want to be on the same page as this person, then it's my business. It is up to me to try and go beneath that surface and see if I can get the same situation from their perspective. And it doesn't mean I'm condoning behavior or I'm just agreeing with them and they're wrong and I'm right. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about having a zoomed out, a bigger perspective, a big picture perspective of what's really, really going on. So again, when you're making decisions, you're doing it from the big picture perspective and not just from your tunnel, from that very limited view. Because it's not only limiting your response, but the way you work with other people. So the perspective shift is really suspending just how am I, who am I in this moment? How do I feel? And just dropping that and just seeing if you can see it from the other person's perspective. Because if you thought what that other person thought, if you had been through their experiences, if you believed what they believed, you would do what they do. You'd be making the decisions they make. You'd be saying what they're saying. It's a wonderful thing when you're able to expand your perspective and see many points of views. So the perspective shift, is as I said, it's not a giving in. It's looking for the win-win. So I've given you an exercise which you won't do today or now, but it certainly will help you a little bit later, because what happens with this perspective, what happens with a perspective shift and what really holds us back from suspending what we think and what we believe is the fact that we are addicted to being right. As I said, we're these judgmental creatures. It happens. But when we have an argument and when we win an argument, we have these hormones flooding our system. We have adrenaline, we have dopamine, and when we win the argument, and remember, perspective, I've won the argument, or I've got my way, or I did whatever I wanted to do and they finally agreed to it. I'm right, they're wrong, whatever it is. I'm not going to isolate any particular situation. But when that happens, you have the adrenaline and the dopamine, and guess what? You become addicted to being right. Without realizing it, you become a bully. You want it your way. And so part of the perspective shift, as I said, the ability to see it from the other person's perspective, what happens is when you're able to do that, you have empathy. Now, empathy is the ability to feel something and try and experience something that another person is feeling or experiencing. And we do that with the empathy. So as soon as I try and see it from the other person's point of view and I have empathy for that person. I have understanding. Now I know why. I may not agree with it, but now I know why. I understand. What the body then does is it secretes oxytocin. And oxytocin is a bonding hormone. So what happens automatically is I feel connected to that person. Again, it doesn't mean I'm going to give in. It doesn't mean that my point is not valid. But what it means is there is now a connection. It's not my way where I'm the bully, dopamine and adrenaline, and I'm getting at you. No, I'm seeing it from your point of view. I have the oxytocin. I feel connected with you. We can now collaborate. I can hear what you have to say. You can hear what I have to say because it comes from you. It comes from you, and the person will respond to the way you are. So again, this is just a practiced behavior. The more you do it, it's so exciting when you have the opportunity to see it from another person's perspective. So that exercise that I was talking about, a way to start doing that is to just take ordinary, everyday things that happen to you. So I'll give you an example. Let's say, for example, you are driving down the road and a traffic officer pulls you aside and you're on your phone and he gives you a ticket, but you're in a rush, you're under pressure, something has happened, this is an important call, and as he pulls you over, you're already irritated. He tells you to lower the window and you start saying, you know what, officer, I'm in a rush and this is a very urgent call and you've got to let me go. And he says, lady, you were on the phone and you have to pay a fine. And I'm not going to go into any more detail about it, but you can imagine what ensues. You can imagine from your point of view, you're thinking he's not even doing his job. And why is he here? It's an important phone call. Look at the taxi down there who went through the red robot. Why is he here? Rather go and help people with the potholes wherever you go. And he's looking at you and he's got all sorts of things happening. And how are you left feeling when you drive off? What is your state of mind? You're angry. You're peed off. And how are you when you arrive at your destination? How is your state of mind? So with a perspective shift, very, very quickly, is take these three columns, column 1, column 2, and column 3. And in the first column, write down your side of the story. This is when something's really burning you, doing it in your personal relationships with colleagues or whatever. What is really, really burning you? And then in the second column, write down the facts. Third column, their side of the story. So the first column is, I'm driving and I'm in a rush, write it all down. Second column, traffic officer pulls over woman who's breaking the law. Third column, traffic officer is doing his job. He probably thinks I disrespect the law, that I'm rude and unaccommodating. I could go on and on. There are three sides to every story. There is your side. There is the other person's side. And for that person, that side is just as relevant and just as real. And then in between, you have truth, and you want truth. So you have your side. You want to understand their side, but you want to operate as closely from the truth, which is unemotional, which is where it's clear thinking, where you can collaborate, you can communicate, you're open to listening. So try this exercise. As I said, when something really burns you, when something really is rubbing you up the wrong way, first column, second column, third column. And something else that I like to use as well is I like to add just like me. Just like me. See how that works. Just like me, this person has a family that they're trying to look after. Just like me, they need to get to work on time. Just like me, they feel pain. Just like me, they want happiness in their life. They want to be safe. They want their family to be safe. Just like me. It's so easy to separate and to just see something from your perspective. And I'm going to say it again, it's on you to do it. If you want peace in your life, if you want to work on your mindset, if you want your state of mind in the moment to be good so you can work effectively, you can do all of those things, then it's on you to just keep rewiring that brain as you go into that defense, as you go into the attack, as you go into withdrawal, as you go into frustration, sadness, fear, whatever it is. Wake yourself up. What's happening? Do the perspective shift. Always going to be on you. And Lastly, I would like to move to the F part of the CPR, which is the reframe. And as always, I have little stories to share with you. And this is really a very short little story. It's about Thomas Edison, who really was an incredible inventor. And they say they actually don't know how many times, how many mistakes he made when he was inventing the light bulb, but there were many. And a reporter once asked him, Mr. Edison, how does it feel to have failed so many times? And Thomas Edison responded, he said, I haven't failed 10,000 times. I've only learned 10,000 ways not to do it. And so Thomas Edison had a natural way of reframing. He had a natural way of taking something that other people would very obviously see as a failure, as a learning. And that has everything to do with the mindset. The growth in the fixed mindset. The fixed mindset, it's a failure. I haven't done it. I can't do it. It's not possible. This isn't going to work. The growth mindset is okay. So I can't do that, but I can do that. It's a way of being. It's a way of seeing. So I've put the F, I beg your pardon, the R, the reframe with this part of the CPR, because you can reframe something in the moment, and you can train yourself to reframe in the moment. And all you're doing is putting a new frame on something that already exists. And so when you take a new frame and put it on the existing picture, you'll be amazed at what else pops up. All of a sudden, you see something that you never saw before. It just becomes obvious to you. So that is that. The reframe is the ability to experience the same thing in a new way. And so a very important part of the reframe is to actively extract a learning. Actively extract something that you didn't see before, a positive in what is a challenging situation. And I'm not talking about turning a negative into a positive, because I see that as sugarcoating. And sugarcoating, when there's pressure, it cracks. No. I'm talking about training yourself, rewiring your brain to actively seek within a challenging situation something that's positive, something that you can learn from. And as I said, that is an absolute training to be able to do it. In every negative situation, there is a positive. Just like in every positive, there is a negative. It is the law of polarity. And I am not trying to make light of any difficulty that you've gone through, that you've experienced, any challenge going, just look for the positive. No. I see, I honor, I know. Real challenges, and especially now, real challenges. We all get it. We're having this. As a collective, we're experiencing this. But I'm saying within this, what can you extract? So you ask yourself questions like this. What am I learning right now? Maybe it's something that's going to propel me into the future. Maybe this is making way for something better to take place. Maybe this is happening so I can better appreciate my relationships and make most of the precious time I have with people I love. Perhaps this is an opportunity to learn what not to do. But this is something you have to actively do, because the default within you, depending on the mindset, is either going to close or it's going to open. But you can shift that by actively seeking. So there's a very common phrase that we use, the what if phrase. And just think about how many times you've used it, and not maybe consciously the what if, but what if I lose my job? What if I can't pay my rent? What if my business collapses? What if she gets ill? What if the country can't support me? What if? And this imagined future, I'm going to bring back to my explanation about how the brain works, that the brain is taking all these past experiences, because we are driven by fear. Because believe it or not, our brain thinks that if we are in a state of fear, we will survive. We're more alert. We're very focused on all these little things happening. Can't see the big picture perspective. And so part of that is projecting into the future with the what if. And as I explained to you as well, as you think, you feel. So now you're going the, what if I lose my job? Or what if my business collapses? Or what if someone I love gets ill? And as you think that, you have this response in your body. And so again, if it's possible to reframe it, the what if I make a mistake? What if he gets hurt? What if I get ill? What if they don't like what I'm doing? What if I don't get the job, etc., etc.? And then you can reframe it and you can say, well, what if I do get the job? And then what's going to happen? And what if I don't get it, but I then have the ability to study? Or if I am not able to take that time out and spend time with the person I love right now, perhaps I can create something at home. And when I see that person, we can turn it into something amazing. So the what if can really be something that fills you with anxiety, or you can just shift that what if, just shift the language, shift the way you see it, which takes me to the final part of the reframe with the CPR, and that is the language that we use. So, our words are things, just as I explained, as you think something and you feel something, you have an emotional response, and that drives the actions you take, it drives your behavior, and it drives who you are in the world. The words that you use are just your thoughts verbalized. So your thoughts are absolutely real. And so I would like you just to become aware of what comes out of your mouth. Just really be aware of the words that you use. Like, what is your default? A lot of times I work with clients and they say things like, oh, it's killing me, or there's something wrong with me, or I can't do it, or I'm an anxious person, and I always just caution people, become aware of the language that you are using, because there really is the emotional, the feeling, the energy that supports those words, and you become those words. And it's not esoteric, it's real. You just have to look at what happens to the brain, the chemistry in the body. And remember what I said, what's the difference between the different times you go to gym? Is it the gym changing, or is there something changing in your own mind? Well, part of the changing in your mind, the words that you use, the thoughts that you're thinking, what you're feeling, the chemical rush and change in your body, it's a thing, it takes hold of you. So just become really aware of the words that you use, the habitual words that you use. So just to give you, I'm just having a look at the time. I'm nearly out of time. So something that I want to bring to your attention, and this is something I often used to do with my kids going to school. I'd shout out, don't forget to pack this, or don't forget your textbook, or don't forget to tell your teacher this. And I realized that I kept emphasizing forget, forget, forget. And just becoming aware of language and my state of mind, I just shifted it. Boys, remember to, remember to, remember to. It's tiny. Forget, remember. But the impact that it has is huge. So start to listen, become aware. What are the words? What are the habitual words? It's killing me. Really? Is it? There's something wrong with me. Really? So just really bring such awareness to that. Something else, right? Have to and get to. Very powerful, these as well. So normally you would say something like, I have to go to work, or I have to exercise, or I have to cook a meal. Whatever it is, the mindset of have to, let's be honest, is one of reluctance and dread and delay and drudgery. And I imagine you change it from have to get to. So let's change that. I have to go to work. I get to go to work. I have to exercise. I get to exercise. I have to cook a meal. I get to cook a meal. Now, the mindset and the energy of the get to is one that is grateful, it's appreciative, it's in action. Now take that phrase one step further. So from have to, get to, now let's add choose to. So let's break that down. I have to complete this project. I choose to complete this project. I have to work. I choose to work. I have to exercise. I choose to exercise. I have to cook a meal. I choose to cook a meal. And once again, the mindset of choose to, the energy, the feel behind choose to is powerful, proactive, creative, forward thinking. Just have to, get to, choose to. Be aware of the language. Be aware of the words that come out of your mouth. Know how powerful they are. And then there's one more little tip I have for you with regards to language, and that is adding yet. And that's when you're focusing on yourself, self-deprecating, I'm not good enough, or all of that kind of thinking. So to boil it down to something that's easy to work with, you could say something like, I can't do something. Okay, I can't work this new app. Just add the word yet. Really feel into that. I can't work this new app. I can't work this new app yet. This is something that Carol Dweck introduced to help people shift from this fixed mindset to a growth mindset. I can't understand this yet. I can't make this yet. It doesn't work yet. It doesn't make sense yet. I'm not good at it yet. So just be aware, the language, what you're saying, be conscious, be awake, check in before you check out, expand that gap. So just to end off really, the CPR, to reset your mindset. And as I said, it's in the moment, because the three components are changing the habits that you do every day. That's mindfulness, being aware, breathing, gratitude. Then this is the CPR, these tools that I've shared with you, how you can shift it, how you reset it in the moment. And you do it, first of all, the golden rule, check in before you check out. Pause, expand the gap. And it's the call it, the perspective shift, and then the reframe. And lastly, just to end off, because I really, really am excited about the fact that a mindset is something that can be changed, because it really is who we are in the world. And I think that Dale Carnegie said it so perfectly in his book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, when he said, two men looked out from prison bars. One saw the mud, the other saw the stars. You are 100% responsible for how you experience your world. And I really hope that I've given you just a couple of tips to get you along the way. Thank you so much.
Niki, thank you.